Admiral Boris Lushniak, the Deputy Surgeon General of the United States, is a member of the Ukrainian-American community here in Chicago. He is out of the country but asked me to relay the following words to you. And I'll just read a brief excerpt from his letter. On April 26, 1986, as a young physician training in family medicine in Chicago, I recall hearing the initial but very limited news of the events at the nuclear power plant in Chornobyl. What resulted was one of the gravest environmental disasters in world history. In the early 1990s, as a physician volunteering on a medical mission in Ukraine, I saw firsthand the medical implications of this disaster and its effects on the psyche of a newly independent nation. Now, years later, in my role as a Deputy Surgeon General of the United States, I am reminded of the vast public health effects of this tragic event and its wide influence not only on Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, but on the world community. This effect is once again made apparent in light of the events taking place in Japan at this very time. May the commemoration in Chicago be marked with the solemnity that such a commemoration demands, but also with the recognition that we all need to be reminded and educated about such events. Signed, Boris Lushniak, Deputy Surgeon General. Now it gives me, it's a great honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the Honorable Dr. Yuri Scherbak, former Ambassador of Ukraine to the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Israel. As an eyewitness to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986, Dr. Scherbak wrote about his experience in a sensational expose documentary novel, Chornobyl, which was published in most ex-Soviet countries, as well as in North America and Europe, notably in Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. As the chairman of the Subcommittee on Energy and Nuclear Safety, Dr. Scherbak led the first parliamentary investigation of the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, a nuclear accident in Semipalatinsk, now Seme, Kazakhstan, and one in the Urals. The Honorable Dr. Yuri Scherbak graduated from the Kyiv Medical Institute with a degree in epidemiology in 1958, received his PhD in 1965, and his Doctor of Medicine in Epidemiology in 1983. He has published over 100 articles on epidemiology, infectious diseases, as well as the theoretical issues in medicine and ecology. In 1991, Dr. Scherbak was appointed Minister of Environmental Protection of Ukraine and member of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. Dr. Scherbak also founded the Ukrainian ecological organization, the Green World, and was the first president of the Green Party of Ukraine. Since 1992, he has served as the first ambassador of Ukraine to Israel, ambassador to the United States, foreign policy advisor to the President of Ukraine, and ambassador of Ukraine to Canada. Dr. Scherbak.
Dear Ms. Vera Leshevska, Chairperson of the Kyiv-Chicago Sister Cities Committee, Reverend clergy, members of the Consular Corps, members of Congress, members of the Office of the State of Illinois and the City of Chicago, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to Chicago and hosting me in your beautiful city. Believe me, I like and I love this city. 25 years have passed since the explosion at the fourth reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the event that has become, according to the UN definition, the biggest nuclear catastrophe in the history of humankind. Chernobyl, next please. Chernobyl became a planetary scale event not only due to a complex of unprecedented sequences, technological, nuclear, radiological, medical, socio-economic, and environmental. Chernobyl is etched in full generation memory, first of all, as a prelude to the man-made apocalypse, as the possibility of death of every living creature on Earth as a result of a technological catastrophe. A black abyss of the anti-war opened in front of mankind. The oldest myth and fears came alive, and the phantom of Hiroshima and Nagasaki approached each home built in the so-called peace atom zone. Next, please. On April 26, 1986, a new black star, Chornobyl or absinthe, appeared in the sky. On March 11 this year, it was joined by another black star, Fukushima. There are several fundamental peculiarities of the Chernobyl catastrophe, which have been confirmed during the recent accident at the Japanese nuclear plant of Fukushima. These peculiarities will have a long-term impact on the development of the world energy and nuclear technologies. Number one, both Chernobyl and Fukushima have shown to us that any nuclear reactor of any type and design in any country is the most dangerous object. In fact, a nuclear power plant is an atomic bomb of delayed action, and it requires handling with maximum responsibility. Next, please. In case of Chernobyl, the catastrophe had unpredictably severe consequences and destroyed the deceitful and optimistically irresponsible myth created by scientists and technologists about secure, accident and conflict-free development of nuclear power industry. No matter how cynical this may sound, especially for us, Ukrainians, but the positive lesson of the Chernobyl catastrophe lies in the fact that it took place of possibly preventing the occurrence of other catastrophes with much more terrible consequences. The Fukushima plant case became one more evidence that despite the high level of technological innovation introduced in the nuclear energy sector within the past 20 years, the coincidence of several unforeseen circumstances led to an accident that is a reduced copy of Chernobyl. Chernobyl on steroids, as called it one American expert. Next, please. This is confirmed by the fact that Fukushima got the highest seventh rank of nuclear hazard, the same as Chernobyl. Number two. Next, please. Chernobyl became a global scale event that has affected the destinies of millions of people living in the vast territories of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. It has left a radioactive trace on the territories of numerous countries of the Northern Hemisphere, including Sweden, Poland, Georgia, Germany, Turkey, the United States, Japan, and many others. During the two explosions and the fire, which lasted for 10 days, from 90 to 300 million curies of radioactivity were released from the destroyed reactor into the environment. According to UN estimates, the amount of radiation released as a result of the Chernobyl accident was at least 100 times bigger than the amount of radiation caused by the explosion of two atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. There is a worrying information from Austrian scientists that the outbreak of radioactive isotopes in Fukushima reached the level of 50% of the Chernobyl fallout fallout in cesium-137 and 20% of iodine. The Chernobyl cloud containing radioisotopes moved with prevailing winds to the north and west, with radioactive particles coming down with rain on areas 1,000 miles away. Next, please. Precipitation from the Chernobyl clouds affected territories populated by 3 billion persons. There were 13 European countries with more than 50% of territory dangerously polluted with Chernobyl radioactive nuclides, and 8 more countries with more than 30% pollution. The Fukushima cloud reached the territory of the US in California, provoked many fears. The process to overcome the consequences of Chernobyl or Fukushima catastrophes takes a long period, from 20 and many more years, taking in account technical problems on NPP, contamination of urban areas, forests, rivers, seas, underground waters, and social economic issues. This number 3. After Chernobyl and Fukushima, the one-dimension rational optimism of technocrats regarding the onward progress of the humankind is unacceptable. Next, please. Chernobyl and Fukushima mean the increasing danger for humankind coming from TSS, technological supersystems of critical infrastructures, which can and do go out of control. Let's recall the system energy accident, blackouts in the USA and Russia, mass malfunction of computer international networks, air crashes caused by overload of flying control services, and others. Next, please. One of the challenges of Chernobyl and Fukushima for the 21st century is the unprecedented scale of engineering and technical problems related to the necessity to establish reliable safety structures in the place of the destroyed reactors and to build safe places for storing radioactive waste. Thus, Ukrainian authorities took a very controversial decision to build a new stainless steel giant confinement over all sarcophagus, which will be cost more than $1.3 billion US. Its size is unprecedented. Height 105 meters, arch age 257 meters. Japanese engineers now plan to erect a 120-meter steel wall to protect the sea from radioactive water and to put over the reactor some kind of sarcophagus from special tissue. Number 4, the Chernobyl disaster combined features both of the worst industrial nuclear accident with complete destruction of reactor and of the environmental catastrophe with large number of victims and considerable contamination of vast territories. Next, please. Catastrophes of such type usually affect many millions of persons, and first of all, children. They produce thousands of displaced persons for environmental reasons. They cause long-term contamination of soil, water sources, and air, and lead to irreversible change in the environmental and numerous ecosystems. Around 5 million persons live today on the territory of 145,000 square kilometers in the areas of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, contaminated with radioactive nuclides. The area of radioactive contamination equals the territories of Belgium and Austria combined. Next, please. Approximately 400,000 persons lived in the most contaminated areas. Out of them, 116,000 persons were evacuated in the spring and summer of 1986 from the areas neighboring the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. In the following years, some more 230,000 persons were resettled. In 1986-87, more than 200,000 persons took part in emergency recovery activities during which they were exposed to high doses of ionizing radiation. Only in Ukraine, the Chernobyl explosion resulted in radioactive contamination of, next please. Of 2,294 villages and small towns. There are 2,200,000 Ukrainian citizens who were given the status of Chernobyl sufferers, including 643,000 children. More than 1.5 million persons live in the area of intensive radiological control. The Chernobyl catastrophe had led to grave environmental consequences, upset the ecosystem balance, and changed the flora and fauna in the north of Ukraine. Next, please. The irreversible loss of the ancient world of Slav Ukrainian civilization of Polisia and destruction of its numerous cultural and spiritual monuments was a particularly painful aspect of the catastrophe. In the Fukushima area, about 170,000 inhabitants were evacuated from the 30-kilometer zone of the nuclear plant. The Chernobyl and Fukushima type of radioisotopes catastrophe is characterized by a cumulative medical effect and a constant increase of health problems among liquidators and those who live on contaminated territories. Next, please. Despite the fact that a relatively small number of people died immediately after the accident, 31 patients died from acute radiation sickness, and then 40 patients, the long-term consequences are grave. The Ukrainian state register of persons who suffered because of the Chernobyl catastrophe contained information about 2.2 million such persons. The share of adult citizens who have been recognized ill in the course of medical examination grows and equals 94.2% among participants of liquidation activities, 89% among evacuated persons, and 84% among those who live on the radioactively contaminated territories. The number of registered Chernobyl disabled persons is 105,000, and 79% of children who suffered as a result of the accident and were indirectly affected by it have been recognized ill. Direct radiation consequences of the accident include an increase in occurrences of thyroid gland cancer. Since the catastrophe, next please, more than 4,300 Ukrainians underwent surgery for this type of cancer. Among new, previously unknown medical consequences of the Chernobyl catastrophe, special attention is drawn to the influence of osteotropic radionuclides on a child organism, which relates to incorporation of radioactive strontium and alpha radionuclides into bone tissue, which leads to pathology of the musculoskeletal skeletal system. Researchers have also found radiocataracta and strong pathology of kidneys and urinary tracts. It was made by Ukrainian and Japanese scientists as a result of penetration of radioactive particles in the tissues. Many liquidators have chronic fatigue syndrome. These defects of the natural immune system were named Chernobyl AIDS and were named by a friend of mine, academician of Ukrainian Academy of Science, Sergei Komisarenko. He used to be also ambassador to Great Britain, ambassador of Ukraine. Next, please. An estimate of the number of persons who died as a result of the accident is the most controversial issue. In Ukraine, there are more than 20,000 families who receive welfare payments due to the loss of their breadwinners in relation with the catastrophe. According to the information of several non-governmental organizations, the number of persons who died as a result of the accident is between 30 and 100,000 of liquidators. Number 5, peculiarity. Catastrophes like Chernobyl have destructive impact on the state as a whole, and in particular on its political and economic system, as the example of the Soviet Union shows. Next, please. The accident of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was a test of the stability and soundness for all state institutions charged with quick decision-making on issues related to security of millions of people and informing the country's own population and the international community. The command and administrative one-party communist system did not survive the Chernobyl test and completely lost its credibility among the people. In fact, the dissolution of the USSR began from Chernobyl. The fact that the authorities ignored the danger of exposing to radiation those children who had to participate. Next, please. Okay, there is a picture on parade on 1st May in Kyiv. Okay. Radiation, those children who had to participate in communist parades on the occasion of the May 1st, and that safety measures were applied selectively to inhabitants of the city of Pripyat in the absence of any protective measures in neighboring villages in the Chernobyl zone, can be considered as a crime. Next, please. In order to overcome the consequences of the catastrophe, the authoritarian Soviet state had to mobilize all existing human and material resources and drew upon the economic, military, police, scientific, technological, and medical potential of the Soviet Union to carry out large-scale measures. Next, please. More than 600,000 people, soldiers, workers, engineers, scientists, participating in emergency activities on the contaminated territories. 210 military units of chemical engineering forces and air forces were mobilized. About 2,500 doctors and 5,000 nurses were employed. More than 10,000 workers were engaged in construction of the sarcophagus. And about 21,000 houses were built and 15,000 new apartments provided for the population evacuated from the zone. Instead of the dead city of Pripyat, the new city, you can see, of Slavutich, was built for the personnel of the nuclear power plant. Direct and indirect economic damage to Ukraine and expenditures for overcoming of Chernobyl consequences amounted to about 175 or 250 billion US dollars and exhausted the finances and economy of the country. Belarus lost $235 billion. The same situation is in Japan. The cost of Fukushima, according to preliminary estimation, is $133 billion. If a Chernobyl-like catastrophe occurs in a poor country, the latter may degrade to a chaotic state, lose its sovereignty, and become a source of international destabilization. Next, please. In case of new nuclear or chemical disaster on the scale of Chernobyl, any country, either dictatorial as USSR or democratic as Japan, would be confronted with the question of how to inform its citizens about the accident. Any public authority would fear spreading mass panic among its population, as this happened in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. Any agency responsible for such an accident would be interested in downgrading its scale. Now, Japanese authorities are strongly criticized for lack of reliable information about the situation in Fukushima. During the Chernobyl catastrophe and in its aftermath, the communist regime carried out an unprecedented operation of information blocking combined with a propaganda campaign of half-truths and misinformation. Next, please. The information blockage and optimistic lies of communist leaders as to the real consequences of the catastrophe led to formation of the powerful anti-nuclear green movement that united hundreds of thousands of persons and had serious impact on the future of the Soviet Union. 20 years ago, when the Berlin Wall fell, the first mass opposition organizations, the Green World and Ruch, the movement, were created in Ukraine. The anti-nuclear movement in Ukraine was supported by Greens and Ukrainian organizations in the USA, Canada, Germany, Switzerland, France, and other European countries. Recalling that first transboundary non-governmental cooperation, I would like once again to stress its importance in the sphere of overcoming such catastrophes. The Chernobyl catastrophe has played a crucial role in the geopolitical destiny of Ukraine. In 1990, the National Democratic Movement, supported by Ukrainian national communists, adopted the Declaration of Independence, where they demanded to proclaim Ukraine as a nuclear-free zone. In years 1992-94, Ukraine voluntarily gave up its nuclear weapons, tactical and strategic, and missiles. Peculiarity number 7. Next, please. One of the issues raised by Chernobyl that are particularly acute and topical in the 21st century is the stability of a state possessing nuclear power plants in the context of protection of these objects from terrorist attacks. It is not difficult to imagine what danger would face such countries or regions as Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Chechen Republic, some African states, and other areas that are striking with civil war or armed conflicts. Any violation of on the territory of countries where nuclear power plants or any other powerful and potentially dangerous technological systems are situated endanger international peace and pose a considerable threat to the population of these countries. The need to involve UN peacekeeping forces in the conflicts threatening to damage nuclear power plants is obvious. Taking into account attempts of certain international terrorist organizations to create a dirty atomic bomb using highly radioactive nuclear wastes, places of storage and disposal of solid and liquid radioactive wastes, and spent nuclear fuel need special international protection. Number 8, the countries affected by disaster of the Chernobyl or Fukushima type and the international community have faced the necessity to create a new international reliable legislative and normative basis regulating management of nuclear and radiation safety. Chernobyl provided the impulse to a number of European states, including Ukraine, to toughen requirements as to safety of nuclear power plants. Basic laws on the use of nuclear energy have been passed, and a number of normative acts regulating all spheres of nuclear energy production and of human and environmental protection from consequences of the catastrophe have been drafted in Ukraine, up to 800 laws and rules. Next, please. Now, in light of the Fukushima disaster, it is critically important to adopt new international legislation and forbid placement of NPPs in dangerous places with high earthquake possibility and in case of other high risks for safe operation. Dear friends, next please. Humankind is facing a critical choice today. How do we ensure world energy supplies without new Chernobyls and Fukushimas? Can we consider nuclear power as sustainable energy source that does not pollute air, is carbon-free, and thus climate-friendly, and ensures energy security? Next, please. Do we have the right to forget Chernobyl and Fukushima and their consequences, forget the unsolved problem of radioactive wastes and safety storages? Next, please. Humankind is on the eve of crucial decisions, taking into account the increasing depletion of fossil fuels. I am speaking about the transfer to renewable energy sources. Germany, in an example to follow the country, has decided to abandon the path of nuclear energy development and instead focus on active promotion of renewable energy. Already producing 14% of energy from renewable sources, Germany plans to increase the share of renewable energy to 30% by year 2020. Next, please. The International Energy Agency estimates that to ensure sustainable development, nearly 50% of global electricity supplies should come from renewable energy sources. Dear friends, next please. I was young, much more young at that time. My first impression when I came to the radioactive zone shortly after the accident in year 1986 was most unusual and absolutely new for me. I was literally shocked. Next, please. When I realized that the development of technology had reached the stage when mankind could be destroyed by the forces it had created itself. Next, please. That's American Dr. Gale, famous at that time. He helped us, and we worked together in Ukrainian hospitals. Every eyewitness of the catastrophe had the same feeling, that of disparity between the peaceful landscapes and green grass growing under warm sunshine on the one hand, and the mortal danger for every living creature from the mortal doses of radiation on the other hand. The empty and dead city of Pripyat, where 50,000 had lived, was especially frightening. It can only be compared to having a nightmare in the daytime. Then, in May 1986, for the first time, having visited the dead Chernobyl zone, I swore to tell the truth about the catastrophe. Dozens of times more, I visited the zone, met hundreds of persons, collected testimonies of numerous eyewitnesses. Next, please. I fulfilled my obligation and wrote a book called Chernobyl, a documentary story published in several countries. I spoke about Chernobyl on international forums at the United Nations headquarters in New York and Geneva, in White House in Washington, D.C., in Kremlin in Moscow, in Tokyo, in Hiroshima, Jerusalem, Helsinki, and Ottawa, Oslo and Zurich, at the World Environmental Conference, Rio 92, and a couple days ago on the Congress of the European Green Party in Budapest. I participated in the congressional hearing on Chernobyl at the US Congress and many similar forums. I hope that we will remember the lessons of Chernobyl and Fukushima, because those are messages to all people on Earth. Be watchful and remember about the diabolic powers of death created by mankind itself. Next, please. The lessons of Chernobyl should never be forgotten. God bless all of us and give us wisdom. Thank you.